The marketplace was loud, filled with voices shouting prices, calling for buyers. And the constant clinking of chains under the red alien sky. A long row of cages stood, each holding a living being, some strong and defiant, others weak and hopeless. The smell of dust and metal filled the air. Mixed with the bitter scent of fear, alien traders walked between the cages, showing off their merchandise to buyers who came from different planets. Most buyers wanted fighters, workers, or servants, something that could bring them profit. No one wanted the girl in the last cage. She sat on the ground, her back against the cold metal bars. Her clothes were torn, her skin pale and covered with faint scars. One of her legs was stiff and thin, the other covered in marks that looked like old burns. Her dark eyes stared at the ground. Not meeting anyone's gaze, the aliens called her broken, unable to work, unable to fight, and they claimed unable to even survive much longer. For them, she was useless. A waste of space to the traders. She was nothing more than trash they needed to get rid of. The auctioneer, a tall alien with scales shining under the dim light, stepped forward. He held a long stick and hit the bars of her cage, making a loud, metallic clang. "This one," he shouted, his voice echoing damaged goods. "Not worth much, but maybe someone wants her for cheap." A cruel laugh ran through the crowd. Some aliens shook their heads. Some made jokes, others didn't even bother to look. "Give her to the trash pit," one voice called. She wouldn't. "Last a week," another said. The auctioneer sighed. "All right, let's start the bid to credits." The crowd laughed again, as if it was all just entertainment. In the back of the crowd, a man stood quietly. He was human, a rare sight in this part of the galaxy. He wore a worn-out jacket, and his face looked tired from long travels. His eyes, however, were sharp. Scanning the girl, he didn't see trash. He didn't see something useless. He saw someone who had been left behind. Someone who had been given no chance to credits. Anyone. 1 credit. Half. The auctioneer shouted, his voice growing impatient. No one raised their hand. The girl didn't move, didn't even blink. It was clear she expected nothing. Not rescue, not kindness, only more pain. Then the man's hand went up. The crowd turned to look. Surprised, the auctioneer's eyes widened. The human bids. For this one, some aliens began whispering. Others laughed louder. Humans collect junk now. One alien mocked. "Maybe he's lonely." Another said with a grin. The man ignored them all. "I'll take her." His voice was steady. "Sold." The auctioneer said quickly, eager to be rid of her. The deal was done for half a credit, less than the price of a single drink. The auctioneer unlocked the cage and stepped aside. The man walked in slowly, crouching down so his eyes met hers. She still didn't look up. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said quietly. No reaction, with careful movements. He slid one arm under her knees and the other around her back. She tensed, expecting pain, but none came. He lifted her easily, carrying her out of the cage. The crowd stared as he walked away. Some shook their heads, others whispered. They thought he was a fool. The girl, weak and silent in his arms, finally spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. You don't want me? I'm useless." He didn't stop walking, didn't slow down. "We'll see about that," he said, his tone calm but certain. As they left the market, the noise behind them faded. But in the girl's chest, a new kind of noise began, something she had not felt in years. It was small, fragile, but real. It was hope. The marketplace was far behind them now. But the voices of mocking aliens still echoed in the girl's mind. She sat quietly in the man's arms as he carried her through the dusty streets toward the edge of the city. The sky above was turning a deeper shade of red as night approached. The air cooler but still dry. Every step he took made her wonder why a stranger and a human of all species had taken her. She was used to being passed from one cruel owner to another. Always for labor, always for pain. But this man had not asked her to walk, had not shouted, had not threatened. He simply carried her as if she was something valuable. The human ship waited in a small, quiet docking area. It wasn't big or shiny like the trader ships. It was old, with scratches on the hull and faded paint, yet, to the girl, it was strange. Because it didn't feel like a prison, he set her down gently at the foot of the ramp, steadying her so she wouldn't fall. "You can walk?" he asked. She hesitated, then shook her head slightly. One of her legs trembled too much to support her weight. Without a word, he picked her up again and carried her inside. The inside of the ship was small but clean metal walls, narrow corridors, and a small cabin with 2 seats at the front. He brought her to a small corner with a simple bed, thin mattress, but it looked softer than the hard floor she had always known. "Sit," he said, and she obeyed without a sound. Her eyes followed him as he disappeared into another section of the ship. A moment later, he returned with a small container of water. He held it out to her. She froze, her fingers trembling. Most masters didn't give water without making her work first. Some gave it only as a reward. She didn't trust it. He seemed to notice her hesitation. Without saying anything, he took the cup back and drank from it himself. Then he handed it to her again. This time she took it, still watching him carefully. The water was cool and clean, and she drank slowly, afraid it might be the last she'd get for a while. When she finished, he placed a small tray beside her, bread-like food and something that smelled warm and meaty. She didn't move, unsure if she was allowed. "Eat," he said simply. Again she hesitated, and again he surprised her by taking a bite himself first. Only then did she begin to eat, small bites at a time, her eyes still cautious. After she had eaten, she leaned back against the wall. Her voice came out quiet and broken. "You will sell me again?" He stopped what he was doing and looked at her. "No," he said firmly, her brow furrowed in confusion. "Then why?" "By me?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced at a small workbench near the cabin door, where strange tools and parts were laid out. "You'll find out," he replied, turning back to his work. The hours passed in silence, except for the occasional hum of the ship's systems. She didn't sleep, her eyes wandering to the tools he was working on. He was building something, small metal plates, wires, and a strange framework that looked like it could fit around a leg. She thought it was some kind of restraint. Her chest tightened at the thought, but his hands moved with patience, not cruelty, at times. He even hummed softly, a sound she found oddly calming. Still, her thoughts were restless. Why would a human spend credits on someone every alien saw as worthless? Why carry her instead of making her crawl? Why feed her before demanding work? She didn't understand, and the not knowing made her uneasy. Later, as the ship's lights dimmed to mimic nighttime, she lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. Through the thin walls, she could hear faint beeping, some kind of communication signal. She strained to listen. A rough alien voice came through the static. "We know you have her, human. Return the girl, and we'll pay you well." Her blood turned cold, so that's why he had taken her, she thought. Not kindness profit. Her hope cracked as quickly as it had formed. She closed her eyes, gripping the thin blanket around her. Tomorrow, she told herself, she would find a way to escape before he could trade her back. But somewhere, deep down, a small part of her wondered if she was wrong about him. The ship lifted off with a deep hum through the small window in the corner. The alien city grew smaller, its lights fading into the red haze of the planet's sky. The girl sat on the narrow bed, her hands gripping the blanket tightly. She didn't speak, didn't ask where they were going. She didn't trust him. Not yet. Her mind kept returning to the voice she had heard through the static, the alien who wanted her back. If he was going to sell her, she needed to be ready. But for now, she waited, watching him from the shadows of the small cabin. The human sat in the pilot's chair, eyes fixed on the controls, every now and then. He glanced at the readings, adjusted a lever, or checked the navigation screen. He didn't seem in a hurry. The calm way he flew made her more nervous than. If he had been rushing when you were a slave, calm from your owner usually meant they had a plan, and the plan was never good for you. After a while, he rose from the seat and came toward her. She stiffened instantly, her fingers curling into the blanket. He stopped a few steps away and held out another small container of water. She hesitated but took it, drinking slowly. Then he set down a small packet of dried food beside her. "Eat when you can," he said, and then, without waiting for a "thank you," he went back to the pilot's chair. The silence between them was heavy. Only the low hum of the engines and the occasional beep from the control panel filled the space. She kept her eyes on him, trying to read his movements. He worked with quiet focus, not once looking back at her. It was strange. Most owners always kept their eyes on you, as if afraid you'd escape. He didn't chain her, didn't lock the door to her small space. It made her even more uneasy, because she couldn't understand why. Hours passed, and the ship entered a darker part of space. Through the window, she saw stars, countless, bright and far away. For a brief moment, she let herself imagine being free somewhere out there. Then she quickly pushed the thought away. Slaves didn't dream. Dreams only hurt more. Her gaze drifted to the workbench again. The strange frame he had been building was still there, metal plates connected with thin wires. In her mind, it still looked like a restraint, something that could trap her leg or force her to move. She remembered the mocking voices in the market. "She can't even walk. Useless thing." Maybe he was planning to fix her leg so she could work for him. That would make sense. But then, why not just buy someone already strong? The question kept circling in her mind like a restless shadow, as the hours turned into what felt like the middle of the night. The ship's lights dimmed further. The human stood and stretched. "I'll be in the cockpit," he said simply. "If you need anything, the water's here, food's here." She stared at him, confused. No orders, no threats, no locks, nothing. When he walked out, the sound of the cockpit door sliding shut echoed softly. She was alone. Her eyes moved to the control panel on the wall. A simple button could open the side hatch. It would be dangerous, maybe even kill her if she jumped out in deep space. But if they landed anywhere, she could try to run. She pulled the blanket tighter, her mind already planning every possible escape. But as she lay there, listening to the faint sound of him moving around in the cockpit, a strange thought entered her head. He had given her food without asking for work, water without demands, and a bed without chains. If he wanted to sell her, why not hand her over right away? Why keep her here safe when he could make credits easily? The confusion made it hard to sleep. In the quiet of the cabin, she touched her injured leg, feeling the old scars under her fingers. It had been years since anyone had even tried to help her. She told herself not to hope, not to believe in kindness, but deep down, a question burned. What if he was different? She closed her eyes, the hum of the ship like a low lullaby. Somewhere ahead, the stars waited, and with them, an answer she wasn't ready for. When the ship landed, the sound of the engines faded into silence. The girl woke to the soft vibration of the floor, her eyes opening slowly. She was still wrapped in the thin blanket. Unsure how long she had slept, the human was already moving around the small cabin, placing tools back onto the workbench and checking a small screen that showed the outside world. Through the open cockpit door, she saw a dusty landscape with jagged rocks under a pale yellow sky. It looked empty. No cities, no traders, no cages. She wondered why they had stopped here. You can walk?" he asked suddenly, turning toward her. His voice was calm, not demanding. She hesitated before answering. "A little." "Not far," he nodded. As if expecting that, without another word, he reached into a storage compartment and took out a small metal frame, the same thing he had been building since they left the market. It looked more complete now, light but strong. Shaped like something that could fit around her leg, he placed it gently beside her bed. "This is for you," he said. Her eyes narrowed in suspicion. "What is it?" "Support," he replied simply. "It will help you walk without pain." She stared at it. Not sure whether to believe him. It could be a trick, another form of restraint. But something in his tone made her pause. It wasn't the voice of someone planning to hurt her. He crouched down, holding the frame open. "If you let me, I'll put it on," he said, "but only if you want." No one had ever asked her what she wanted before. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, slowly, she nodded. He worked carefully, attaching the device around her injured leg, adjusting the straps so they weren't too tight. When he stepped back, she tested it by moving her foot. It felt lighter, almost supported. She took a step, then another. For the first time in years, the pain didn't crush her with each movement. A strange mix of fear and hope stirred inside her. He watched silently, arms crossed, not smiling, not gloating. Just waiting to see if it worked. When she managed to walk from one side of the cabin to the other, she stopped and looked at him. "Why?" she asked, her voice quiet. "Because you deserve better," he answered without hesitation. She didn't know how to respond to that. After a short while, he stepped outside the ship, motioning for her to follow. She hesitated, glancing at the open ramp. If she ran now, she could disappear into the rocky hills. But her legs still felt weak, even with the support frame, and she didn't know what dangers waited out there. So she followed him instead. Outside, the air was dry and carried a faint metallic scent. He handed her a small container filled with tools. "Hold this," he said, "and follow me." They walked to a panel on the side of the ship where wires and circuits were exposed. He began to work, asking her to pass him specific tools one by one. Her hands trembled at first, afraid she might drop something and be punished. But each time she handed him the wrong tool, he simply pointed to the right one and said, "That one," without anger. Minutes turned into hours, and they worked side by side under the strange yellow sky. By the time they returned to the ship, she was exhausted but strangely proud. She had helped without being hurt, without being shouted at. The feeling was unfamiliar but not unpleasant. Later, as they shared a simple meal inside, the silence between them felt different, not heavy like before, quieter, but warmer somehow. She found herself glancing at him when he wasn't looking. The thought returned, maybe he really wasn't going to sell her. But that night, as she was about to fall asleep, the faint sound of the communicator crackled again. A deep alien voice spoke through the static. "We're close. Human. You still have the girl. Name your price." Her blood went cold. Maybe she had been wrong to trust him. She lay awake long after the message ended. Tomorrow, she decided, she would find out the truth one way or another. The next morning, the girl woke to the smell of something warm. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. Warmth and food were not things she usually woke up to. When her eyes opened, she saw the human standing near the small cooking unit. In the corner of the ship, he had a mug in one hand and a small plate in the other. When he noticed she was awake, he placed the plate in front of her bed. "Eat," he said simply, before returning to his workbench. She stared at the food, her mind replaying the words she had heard through the communicator the night before. "We're close. Human. You still have the girl. Name your price." Her chest felt tight. Every kindness he had shown her could have been nothing more than a way to keep her calm until the buyers arrived. The water, the food, the walking support, all just preparations before the sale, she decided. not to eat. Instead, she rose slowly, testing her leg with the support frame he had built. It still worked perfectly. But the thought of being taken back to her captors made her stomach twist. If she was going to escape, she had to do it now, before they reached wherever he planned to meet them. She stepped quietly toward the ramp, her eyes darting to make sure. He was distracted. Her hand reached for the release button, but before she could press it, his voice came from behind her. "Where are you going?" She froze, her heart pounding, turning slowly. She met his eyes. I heard them," she said, her voice shaking. "I heard you talking to them. They want me, and you're going to sell me." His brows furrowed, and he set down the tool in his hand. "Is that what you think?" he asked quietly. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. He took a step closer, his tone steady. "If I wanted to sell you, I could have done it the day I bought you. They would have paid me triple what I paid. Then why?" she asked, her voice almost breaking. "Why take me at all?" He reached over to the workbench and picked up something covered with a cloth. When he pulled the cloth away, she saw a fully completed exoskeleton brace, larger and more advanced than the one she was wearing. "This," he said, "is why." He handed it to her, the metal light and smooth in her hands. "It will replace the temporary one you have now. It's stronger, lighter, and it will let you walk and run without pain." She stared at it, her throat tight. "No one has ever done something like this for me," she whispered. He shrugged slightly, as if it wasn't a big thing. "You're worth it," he said. The words hit her harder than she expected. All her life, she had been told she was worthless. Now here was someone saying the exact opposite, and he meant it before she could speak. The communicator crackled again. The same alien voice came through. "We see your ship, Doc, now human." The human's jaw tightened, and he turned to her. "They found us. You can stay here while I deal with them, or—" He paused, looking her directly in the eyes. "You can stand with me." Her first instinct was fear. She remembered the pain, the humiliation, the years of being treated like an object. But then she looked at the brace in her hands, the proof that someone saw her as more than just a broken thing. Her grip on the metal tightened. "I'll stand with you," she said, her voice steady for the first time in years. He nodded, a faint smile crossing his face. "Then get ready," he said, handing her a small energy pistol. It felt heavy in her hand, but she didn't let it drop. This time, she wasn't going to run. This time, she was going to fight for the choice he had given her. As the ship's ramp lowered and the shadows of the bounty hunters appeared outside, she took a deep breath. Whatever happened next, she knew one thing: she would never go back to being nothing. The ramp lowered slowly, letting in a wave of dry, hot air. The girl's fingers tightened around the small energy pistol, her heart thudding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Outside, 3 shadowy figures stood against the pale yellow horizon as the dust cleared. Their forms became clearer, tall, armored bounty hunters with sharp weapons hanging at their sides. Their eyes glowed faintly, scanning the ship like predators searching for prey. The human stepped forward, placing himself in front of her without hesitation. "Stay close," he said quietly. She nodded, though her legs felt heavy, even with the new brace. The lead bounty hunter took a step forward, his voice deep and cold. "You have something that belongs to us, human," he said. "Hand over the girl and we'll let you leave with your life." The human didn't move, didn't even blink. "She doesn't belong to you," he replied calmly. The bounty hunter laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "Everything broken belongs to someone, and she's ours." Without warning, the bounty hunter raised his weapon, a long black rifle with glowing edges. But the human was faster. He pulled his own blaster and fired, the shot slamming into the ground near the bounty hunter's feet as a warning. "Last chance to walk away," he said, his tone turning hard. The other two bounty hunters moved to flank them. The girl's grip on the pistol tightened, her breathing quick, her instincts screamed at her to run, to hide, to curl up and disappear. But she forced herself to stay, remembering his words. "You're worth it." The fight began in a sudden flash of light and sound. Blaster bolts cut through the air, striking the rocks and sending up bursts of dust. The human moved with quick precision, firing and dodging as if he had done this 100 times before. He stayed between her and the enemy. But they were fast, circling to trap them. One bounty hunter rushed from the side, aiming straight for her. Her body froze for a split second. Then her training from years of survival kicked in. She lifted the pistol with both hands and fired, the bolt hitting the attacker's shoulder. The alien roared, stumbling back, his weapon dropping to the ground. Her hands shook, but she didn't lower the pistol. The human glanced back at her briefly. A quick nod of approval before turning to fire again. The lead bounty hunter snarled and charged, their heavy boots thudding against the ground. The human met him head-on, blocking the first strike with his forearm and pushing him back. They exchanged blows, punches, kicks, and weapon strikes, each one sharp and fast. The girl saw the third bounty hunter sneaking behind them, weapon raised, her chest tightened, her pulse pounding in her ears. Without thinking, she moved, the brace on her leg supporting her as she pushed forward. She grabbed a fallen piece of metal from the ground and hurled it at the attacker. It hit with a sharp clang, knocking his aim off. The humans spun around and took the shot. Dropping the last of their enemies, silence followed, broken only by the sound of the wind sweeping over the rocks. The three bounty hunters lay scattered on the ground, alive, but too injured to continue the fight. The human kept his weapon raised until he was sure they wouldn't get up again. Then he turned to her. "You okay?" he asked. She swallowed hard and nodded, though her hands were still shaking. "You saved me," she said quietly, almost in disbelief. He shook his head. "You saved yourself." Her gaze dropped to the pistol in her hands. It felt different now, heavier, but in a way that gave her strength. She had never fought for herself before, never stood her ground, and now she had. The human walked to the ramp controls and began raising it. "We should leave before more come," he said. As the ramp closed, sealing them inside, she took one last look at the defeated bounty hunters. Lying in the dust, for the first time in her life, she didn't feel like prey. The ship's engines roared to life, leaving the bounty hunters far behind. Inside, the girl sat in the small cabin, her heart still racing from the fight. Her hands trembled as she set the pistol down on the bed beside her. The human moved around the cockpit, checking the controls and scanning for any more ships in pursuit. Once he was sure the area was clear, he returned to her side. "You did well," he said simply. She looked at him in surprise, unsure if he meant it or was just being kind. But his steady gaze told her it was the truth. They sat in silence for a while, the hum of the ship filling the space between them. Her mind wandered back to the marketplace, the cage, and the voices calling her worthless. The same voices that had echoed in her head for years, but now those voices felt quieter, almost as if they had been pushed aside by the sound of his words. "You're worth it." She touched the brace on her leg, feeling the smooth metal under her fingers. It wasn't just a tool to help her walk. It was proof that someone had seen more in her than weakness. Someone had chosen to give instead of take. The thought made her chest feel strange, warm, but heavy at the same time. The human broke the silence. "We'll be on a safer route soon," he said. "But you'll need to decide where you want to go." Her head tilted slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he replied, "you can stay with me, work on the ship, see new places. Or I can drop you off somewhere safe, a planet where no one will know you." Her first instinct was to choose safety. A quiet life far from bounty hunters and traders sounded tempting. But then she imagined stepping off his ship and never seeing it again, never seeing him again. The thought left a hollow feeling inside her. She realized safety wasn't the same as living. "I'll stay," she said, her voice steady. He gave a small nod, as if he had expected her answer. "Then you're part of the crew now," he said. "And crew means family here." Her eyes widened at the word family. It was something she had never truly had. The days that followed were different from anything she had known. They repaired parts of the ship together, shared meals, and even laughed sometimes. She learned how to read the navigation screens, how to clean the engine filters, and how to patch minor hull damage. Each new skill felt like another piece of her life being rebuilt. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. One evening, they landed on a small trading outpost. It was peaceful, far from the noisy, dangerous markets she had once been trapped in. As they walked through the quiet streets, she noticed the way people looked at her, not with pity, not with disgust, but with simple curiosity, as if she was just another traveler. It made her stand taller, her steps surer. The brace on her leg didn't feel like a reminder of weakness anymore. It felt like armor in one of the shops. A vendor smiled at her and handed her a small carved stone in the shape of a bird. "It's for good luck," the vendor said. She held it tightly. Feeling its smooth edges, once she would have believed luck was something other people had. But maybe now she could believe it was hers too. That night, back on the ship, she placed the stone on the shelf above her bed. The human noticed and asked, "What's that?" "Proof," she replied. "Proof that I'm not nothing." He didn't say anything at first, just smiled faintly before returning to his work. As the stars stretched out before them once more, she leaned back in her seat. Her journey had started. In a cage, surrounded by voices that wanted her gone. But it had brought her here to the open sky. Two choices, to a place where she was seen. She wasn't just a broken alien girl anymore. She was part of something bigger, part of a crew, part of a family, and for the first time in her life, she knew exactly what she was worth.